Welcome in, everyone. We're going to give folks 30 more seconds to join in, and then we'll get started. Okay, we are 30 seconds past the top of the hour. So again, welcome everyone. We have a great webinar for you today and a great group of presenters. Just a few housekeeping notes to start off with. We are recording today's webinar. We'll be sending a follow-up email to all of you with a link to the recording and slides. And please feel free to type in your questions at any time using the Q&A function located in your toolbar, and we will follow up with you after the webinar. Again, we have a great webinar for you, and to start, I'd like to send it over to Christine Cochran for the introduction. Christine, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone, and welcome. I also want to thank you for joining today's webinar, The Snack Journey, Where We Are and Where We're Going, with Circana's Sally Lyons Wyatt and Darren Seifer. My name is Christine Cochran. I'm the president and CEO of SNAC International. SNAC International is the international trade association for the snacking industry, with over 400 member companies worldwide. We are so proud to partner with Circana for today's program, but in all the programming that we do with them throughout the year, including educational programming at some of our signature events, as well as the industry thought leadership throughout the year. We rely on Circana's trusted data and insights for our annual State of the Industry report, and also we make that data available to our members via Circana's Unify Plus data portal. But before I turn it over to Sally and Darren, I want to remind everyone that you can see them live at our SNX event, which kicks off this weekend, April 14th through the 16th in Dallas, where they will be sharing their snacking wisdom at this very special event. SNX, for those who don't know, is a gathering of snack producers, suppliers, and partners from every segment of the snack value chain. The conference features one-to-one business meeting opportunities, as well as an immersive experience zone where snack producers can meet with leading suppliers at each step of the snack production process, from ingredients to market. And I can't forget to mention our always popular Snack Tank pitch competition. This is a contest for startups for the chance to win $10,000 in cash. And Shark Tank's Damon Johns will be leading our panel of expert industry judges. It's not too late to join us in Dallas this weekend. Just visit the SNX website at snxevent.com for more information and to register. Now let's get down to why we are all here, which is to hear from Darren and Sally. Darren Seifer is the industry analyst in CPG, food consumption, and food service for Circana, and brings more than 20 years of experience to today's webinar. He is a contributing author of Circana's annual Eating Patterns in America report, which is a compilation of all food and food service research for the company that they conduct throughout the year. He also provides insights based on Circana's research across the country on the health state of U.S. consumers, the dynamics of meal delivery kits, and the future of snacking. And Sally Lyons Wyatt is Global EVP and Chief Advisor, Consumer Goods and Food Service Insights with Circana. She is a regular speaker at SNAC International events for over the last decade. She has more than 25 years of experience and is a recognized thought leader on shopping and consumption trends. She is a frequent speaker at industry events and has a particular expertise in the evolution of meal trends as well as snacking. So without further ado, let me turn the stage over now to Sally.
Christine, thank you so much. And we also really value our partnership with SNAC International. So it was exciting that you accepted our request to have you kick it off. So thank you. All right. So I do want to thank a few folks that were contributors to this. You see their pictures and names. There's obviously, it's not just Darren and Sally. There's so many people that really help pull this together. And I just wanted to personally thank them because there's no way we could bring you the insights on what's happening in the snacking industry without them. The journey. So we're going to have 5 different chapters that we're going to walk you through. The first one's all about consumer stoplights. So it's a journey. So there's going to be some back roads and some stoplights and a lot of other things along the way. But the stoplights are really the challenges that consumers have faced over the past year. But here's the bottom line. Snacking is still strong in the US. We have a snacking lifestyle in this country, and that has not stopped. Number two, shifting gears. There's a lot of different shifts that consumers have made. And in that, they're really trying to cater to whatever their needs are, and their needs and value means different things to different people. And so that means that the industry probably needs to adopt and have some agility to adjust. There's different fares. So, it costs a little bit of different things for different consumers. Price has been probably one of the headlines for the last 2 years, but price really wasn't the only thing that was a driver of growth or decline. And we're going to talk about that. Joy rides. Oh, they're so much fun. The joy rides are just a way in which consumers have personalized their journey. And I think it's a way for the industry to engage and continue to add excitement to get consumers to buy yet one more. And then moving forward, which is the fuel we need to continue to go forward, we will share with you some fun ways that we think you can continue to not only increase trips, but also buy rate. So, getting into the stoplights, you can see along the path, there's a lot. But let's talk about a few of them. We're not going to talk about every one of them. The first one is the fact that whenever we've been sharing this with you, so this is, if you've seen any of our webinars, you know this fact, that CPG prices are roughly 30% higher than 19. That is outpaced wage growth. And so consumers are absolutely having to make decisions on what discretionary and non-discretionary goods and services that they want to be able to buy. They've been hit with housing increases. They've been hit with a lot of other increases, which has had them dip into their savings, which is impacting their credit and also just the availability of funds. We've seen increased debt because of that. There's global conflicts that are impacting supply chain. There's weight loss drugs that Darren's going to just give you a little sliver of that. There's more that's going to come out in coming weeks. Assortment declines because we also haven't had as much innovation out there. So we've had that. So you can kind of see that there's all the different pauses that consumers have had to make throughout the last year that has impacted what they're buying. In fact, this is the power of Circana page. The kind of the purplish colored icons are what we would consider general merchandise. The white colored icons are more traditional CPG, like food and beverage, pet, home care, mass, and healthcare. As you look at the stoplights, if you will, on this, you will see that there are some points in time that consumers have said, you know what, there's just some products and services I can't buy as much anymore. And a lot of them are more of the general merch and on the discretionary side. So you can kind of see that bottom row starting with housewares and going all the way over to juvenile. So consumers have made some very conscientious shifts in gears and what they're wanting to spend their money on. But the one that has bucked every single trend is prestige beauty. For the last few years, prestige beauty has absolutely increased double digits from a unit per volume as well as dollar perspective. When you think about snacking, though, as we double click in, if you will, snacking is definitely up, and mobility influenced it. So if you remember, it feels like a long time ago, but at the beginning of 23 was where we saw an uptick of consumers getting out of the home and out of the home office and going into the office itself. And that has allowed not only consumers to still snack, but you're going to see in here, there's been some shifts in how and where they might snack. So the beauty of Circana is the fact that we brought together Heritage IRI and Heritage MBD. And with that, what Darren and I have done is brought together the benefits of the snacking insights that we have collectively now. So at the very top, you're going to see 46% of consumers snack 3+ stacks a day. Last year it was 49, so we're down 3. However, there's no change as of 5 years ago, which means it's a stable trend. And therefore, I'm still bullish. You still have a very large portion of the US population snacking 3+ snacks a day. And as yet another point to say it's happening, even when we look at occasions per capita, and you look at those versus 2020, we can see that we've got an uptick in those as well. In fact, up 9 annual occasions versus 2020 in total. As we look at our MULO Plus universe, so looking at a broader universe, we found that core snacks at retail is about a $214 billion universe as defined here. You will get the deck. In the back of the deck, you'll get an idea of what's in here, but it is a big universe. And when we look at the trends, you'll see that I started with total store with perimeter, then food and beverage. Underneath food and beverage is macro snacks, which is a combination of core and extended. When you take a look at it, you will see that total store is declining at 1.7, which is again a little softer, so it's not as bad as it was even just a year ago. Food and beverage is slightly better at 1.4, but core snacks is slightly worse at 1.8. Part of this is a combination of different issues. One is the different sizes consumers are buying now impacts units. Where they're shopping impacts units. The amount they're buying impacts units. The shifting they're making in the size, like just the sizes themselves, impacts the units. So there is a lot there, but you'll see that core snacks outpaces all of them from a dollar sales perspective. This is your top ranking categories where chocolate candy tops from a dollar from a dollar sales perspective. And again, you've got the stoplights, right? You got the red and the green. And what's interesting about this, you'll notice that almost all are growing dollars with the exception of snack nuts, but yet not all are declining on units. There are 3 that are the standouts: yogurt, tortilla chips, and all other salted snacks. And part of what's interesting about this story that we're unfolding for you today is the diversity and the variety that consumers are snacking on, including better for you and indulgent. For the last, 4 years, I think, I have been saying indulgence is winning, indulgence is winning. I don't know when better for you is going to come back. I think we're starting to turn the corner. And I think I'm seeing it not only in the survey, but also in the point of sale, as well as consumption. So we're turning that corner. We haven't quite turned where it's on the highway, but we've definitely started to see that with some of the choices that consumers are making. But those pit stops along the way. So I kind of showed you the stoplights, right? But these are more pit stops. There's a lot of different shifting and trading up and trading down that's happening. And it's very complex. There is not a silver bullet for this. There is not any one-shot wonder that's going to cure all ills here. In fact, I think what is important to take note and to really understand for your company is that it is a multitude of facet of implications that are going on from these actions. You've got some consumers that are going from out of home to in home, but also vice versa. So Darren's going to take you through that. We also see consumers going from grocery to value channels. Value can mean different things. Convenience is part of that. Not that somebody would say, well, convenient pricing might not be the most valuable. No, but it's conveniently located. And it's also the size that you can buy that is an absolute price point. From larger sizes to smaller, but we also know some consumers buy smaller, going from smaller to larger, depending on their need. We've got mainstream to premium. So premium is definitely a trend. And then you've got mainstream to private brands. And then you see some purchasing a little less often, and some also not purchasing unless they're able to embrace, not purchasing as many deals as they did in the past. I do think 2024 is going to be a year where we see better return on promotion. So we're monitoring it, and I'm very hopeful. But I do think we're moving a little farther away from what the prices consumers used to know as the norm, and now they're looking for the deals. When all the shifting happened, we started to see some differences in unit leaders as well as volume leaders. So this is raw change. And when you look at this, you're going to see that there is a little bit around variety in this list too, from corn snacks to yogurt down to cut snacks is going to be the cut fruit, and the cut produce for snacking is cut snacks. So you can see that there is a little bit of everything on that list. And from a volume perspective, not the exact same list, but yet same theme of variety, whether it's non-chocolate candy or even dairy chocolate chunks of cheese. The power of Circana strikes again on this page, and this is giving you a view of in and out of store. So, or in and out of home, or in and out of wherever you want to talk, but it's going to give you the view of purchasing as well as consumption. As you walk across this, one of the things you'll start with is total retail. So that's looking at, again, more CPG sales. Then you'll see total commercial food service. That's going to be the quick serve, quick serve, full service, retail food service. So where you can go in and sit down and have something to eat, that's in there. So commercial food service versus retail food and bev. Couple of things you'll notice. Retail slightly down with the shifts that have been made, -0.2, where food service grabbed that 0.2. But it isn't just that pure, because within retail food and bev, there's some shifting going on where you see grocery and drug and some others losing a bit of share, where club, C-store, and dollar have gained. From a commercial food service point of view, for snacking, it was all about quick serve. Quick serve gathered up 0.5 points of share and has absolutely been able to do that because of mobility. Now, that's looking at a full year. Darren and I would tell you that there have been shifts that have happened in the last few months, that there's not as much going on from a quick serve perspective for snacking because of the pricing. And so this is one of those pictures that we encourage you to observe as often as possible, because these shifts are continually evolving. So this is a point in time. It's an important point in time so that you understand how the magnitude of the shifts that were made, but at the same time, monitoring these shifts ongoing is important. The other piece of the journey is what's motivating consumers to take the journey. And as you would imagine, there's some macro needs that represent more than half of snacking and treating, and that's the emotional motivation. And it did grow. You still saw growth in functional and wellness too. Not wellness from a growth standpoint, but you still see consumers gravitating to functional benefits, wellness, as far as some of the needs and what they're looking for. But this emotional, when we talk about it, it's really about the favorite routine, what's yummy, what's going to reward me. And as we look across the different generations and we look to see how has this shifting really carried forward, you'll see that there's probably some growth in Gen Alpha, Gen Z, the younger Gen Z, and Gen X that I just wanted to point out. And Gen Alpha is really kind of in that high consumption life stage for snacking, and it's a growing cohort. And then you've got Gen Z, who is also kind of going through a different life stage where their snacking habits are evolving, and you can kind of say the exact same thing for Gen X. So the changing in life stage is also something to take note of as you continually monitor. And I'm going to have Darren walk you through a little bit more about what that means. Darren?
Thank you, Sally. And let me also extend my welcome to all of you today. So let's talk about shifting gears. And what we're going to talk about in this section has more to do with consumption. And so how often people are having these snack foods, who's doing it, and how are those gears shifting as we examine all the different facets of snacking. And this is yet another unique power of Circana thing. It's only we are going to be able to show you how movements in snack sales are related to the underlying consumption pattern changes. So I'm very excited to share some things with you today related to that. So we need to think of snacking as a journey as we go through life. What I'm showing you here is the average daily snacking occasions that people have by the different age groups. And as Sally already alluded to, Gen Alphas are really in this high frequency of daily snacking. On average, kids less than 18, they do this about 5 times a day. And to be clear, this could be a snack food that they had at a bona fide snacking occasion. It can be something that they had with their main meal, or it could be something that they had instead of a meal. So when you put all of that together, young kids are in particular having about 5 times a day. We pulled back a little bit as we enter adulthood. Gen Zs are in this life stage right now, and so we should start to expect a little bit of pullback from this group until they get to where millennials are right now. So that's around that 25 to about mid 40s, and we start to ramp back up. Now, Gen Xers are in that life stage right now, and we have seen Gen Xers start to increase their usage as well, and boomers already did that. They're already on that plane. Now, we shouldn't look at this and say, well, let's forget about millennials for now until they start to ramp up. Keep in mind, millennials right now are starting to form their favorites and their habits and their routines. And so it really behooves you to really get with this group now, to really become their favorites, because once they start to hit that life stage, when they start to get, I guess you could say, explosive growth in terms of how often they snack and what they snack on, you want to be their favorite. So let's make sure that even though millennials aren't necessarily on a daily basis generating as much growth as some other generations, it's very important to get with this large group right now and be their favorite. So let's talk a bit about how different generations and different income groups are spending on snacks, whether it's in-home versus away from home. And you can clearly see that pricing has been a factor regardless of where consumers are, because for the most part, we're seeing the spend increase whether we're away from home or in home. So this, once again, it's another unique view that Circana can provide about what's going on both at retail and food service. And so Gen Zs are really the only generation where we see that away from home snacking, at least the spend on it, increase faster at food service than we see at retail. This, again, is partly from the life stage that they're going into. As they become adults, they realize, hey, I don't really know what to do in the kitchen that much. And so they turn to food service operators to help them out with a bit more. And while maybe we're not seeing them go to restaurants in droves for main meals as much as we thought we would have, because the pandemic really taught them how to use their kitchens earlier than we would have thought, snacking seems to be one area where they're going for things like that little affordable indulgence that maybe they can't make something at home, but that away from home experience is something that they're looking for as well. And then when we're looking at the income side of things, well, it makes a bit more sense that the higher income consumers are the ones who are able to absorb these higher prices a bit more often. And so they're the ones who are continuing the spend going. And actually, when we look at traffic, so that's actual trips to restaurants, 100,000 plus income households are really the only ones that are increasing traffic versus the pre-pandemic period. And we're really not seeing that with any other group. So it's just kind of like an interesting split here. We do see some younger generations spending a bit more, but it's really overall, who's really doing it the most, it's the higher income consumers. So let's dig into that a little bit deeper. So if we break these generations down and we say, okay, so we see that Gen Zs, they're spending a little bit more on away from home. What part of or what subsegment are we seeing that going to? So quick service restaurants is really doing a bit better when it comes to snacking occasions with Gen Zs. So thinking about a lot of those outlets that are snacking focused, I've seen a lot of outlets that are maybe their main thing is a cookie, right? And so that's been driving them to get out a bit more. And I'll show you some of the growing categories away from home too. You'll see coffee, but not just any old coffee. Specialty coffee is a big winner across the different generations as well. So we've seen that. We've seen coffee shops do very well. Fast casual outlets have also done pretty well at the same time. Again, it's helping that on-the-go consumer get those affordable indulgences as well. Now, like I said, Gen Xers they're ramping up. We've seen them engage in an array of different types of snack foods over the past few years. And pricing and convenience is driving them a bit more towards C-stores. So as Sally mentioned, it's not always about a convenient price, but it could be about a convenient location. And so Gen Xers, perhaps on the way home from work or just throughout their days, getting their kids around, they do find this to be a very convenient option. And while we don't see shifts for boomers and seniors happening very drastically compared to other generations, I wouldn't take a lack of shifting as a lack of snacking. These generations are in a relative high in terms of daily consumption of snack foods. So even though there isn't a lot of shifting going on for these consumers, there's still a lot of activity going on at the same time. And similarly, when we look at what's going on with the different income groups, we do see shifts going on here as well. So certainly on the lower income consumers, so we are seeing a bit more from grocery towards mass, convenience, dollar stores. So mass stores are there to help them out with getting lower prices for the things that they would typically buy in grocery stores. Once again, convenience is there for the location. And then the dollar stores are also there to give them that lower pack size or the smaller pack size that a lot of lower income consumers use that as a way to kind of fit within their budgets more often. It's not just something we're seeing within snacking, it's something that we're seeing at food and beverage retail in total, that many consumers are going to dollar a bit more to get those more affordable items at a unit level as well. Now, what are the different snack food types that we're analyzing and how they've been trending? So if we look at the consumption rates for savory snack foods, sweet offerings, as well as better for you snack foods, the winners of the last few years have been around savory and sweet. So that's what Sally was talking about in terms of this shift towards indulgence, particularly as we entered the COVID era. You know, when we were in lockdowns, there really wasn't a whole lot to do. It was about eating tubs of ice cream and making cookies and passing the time by baking. And while we're clearly not as concerned about the pandemic and COVID anymore, a lot of that has stuck with us. I think what a lot of consumers realize is that these indulgent offerings give us a momentary escape from what we're dealing with at the moment. You know, personally, a little piece of chocolate is how I like to end my day to kind of ease into the night. So I'm still doing that. It's something I picked up during COVID, and I think a lot of other people are doing this at the same time as well. You can see that better for you snacks has been on a multi-year decline. The main category behind that is fresh fruit. So we haven't really seen that kind of that stem quite yet. I will say we have done some forecasting work, and in 2025, the model does have that bottoming out, but you know, that's based on information that we know now. If the situation on the ground changes and say we have even more stressors facing our lives, maybe better for you won't bottom out quite just yet, but we do think it might bottom out coming next year at some point. So we're definitely going to keep our eyes on this quite a bit. Now, how often are people snacking throughout the day? You know, we already kind of gave a sense of how it's about 5, but in terms of how people eat because they're on the go, a lot of people say that they're going to have a snack food as a meal because they're just so busy, right? And this plays an important role in people's daily lives. It's that fueling, right? I've got to get to my next meeting. I've got to get to my next appointment. I'm not sitting at home like I was in 2020. So snack foods are playing a pretty intricate role in consumers' lives to help them just kind of get through. And so that really speaks to people being out and about more often. So who is driving this away from home trend? Well, this is looking at where we are typically consuming our snack food. So whether it was at work, we were at school, we were in transit, or just out and about outdoors. And there's really 2 that are at the or above the pre-pandemic level, I should say. So we have people who are at school, so that's kids mostly, and people who are outdoors. So you're just kind of getting this picture of kids kids are all back in school, right? We're not doing that remote learning anymore the way some of us are still remote, like I'm not at an office right now. But people being outdoors a lot and just getting outside and engaging in more activities. We are seeing a bit more in that workspace, but again, we're not really all back in the workplaces every day. And if we are going back to the workplace, it's not as often as we were doing it at the same time. So the generations that are really driving this makes a lot of sense. So we see Gen Alpha, we see Gen Zs who are doing this a bit more often. We see it a bit more happening with the adult side, but it's maybe not so much about work that's driving it. It's part of it, but we also just see people outdoors. And so there's evidence that people are just taking their snack foods from home, and that's how they're snacking as they move about. So this is looking at when particularly snack foods are being consumed. So are we having them as a pure between meal occasion? So outside of breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Are we having them with our main meals, or are we replacing our main meals with this? And really, if there's any shift here, what's interesting is we're seeing that appear with meals more often, just a little bit. That 1%, though, when you think about the billions of snacking occasions that people in this country have every year, it does equate to something that could be sizable. And what it also says to me is consumers are finding they have less and less time to make their meals big. So they're using snack foods as a way to make those meals bigger. So it's almost like they're becoming a little bit more often a side dish to our main meals because, hey, we don't have the time that we did in 2020 to make everything from scratch because we have to incorporate things like commute time and getting kids to and from school, after school practices and whatnot. We're just out and about and mobile more often these days. So I alluded to this already, but these are the categories that consumers are having more often, whether they're in-home or they're getting it at food service operators. And it's very reflective of their different needs. So we see, like, for instance, Gen Zs, we see some salty snacks, rice and popcorn snacks, seeds, or things that are growing in the home. When we look away from home, we see things like breakfast sandwiches, specialty coffee. In fact, you see specialty coffee growing for Gen Zs, millennials, and boomers. It's, again, those affordable indulgences that people can get at food service operators, something they're maybe not going to be able to make at home, but it gets them out of the home, or maybe they're already out of home, and it just gives them that little thing that maybe they're not getting the whole meal, but they're getting something from the food service operator that just makes them feel a little bit better about their day. And then when looking at what's going on in terms of the income side of things. So again, we look at the lower income side, things like cookies, nuts, chocolate, things that are growing in home. Again, we see specialty coffee growing for the low and middle income side of things. When we get to the higher income side, again, this is the group that has been spending much more on food service because they can absorb the higher cost. Snacking on burgers actually is something that we see with this group. We saw that with a couple of generations on the prior slide too. Now, people are thinking, well, are people really having a burger and considering it a snack? Well, think about how it's possible to get things like a slider when you're away from home, right? So that's the kind of things that we see happening at food service, even during snack times. You know, when people say they're away from home and they're getting something that's healthy or even a snack, what you consistently see popping up still are burgers, fries, and carbonated soft drinks. Those are they just reign when people are consuming away from home. How we mix and match it and the sizes of them could change, and that could then count as a snack occasion. All right, so let's look at when during the day we're typically having our snacking occasions. And this also causes us to change gears as we're going throughout the day. So keep that in mind as well. So we certainly see there's some three major peaks here. You know, we have it with our breakfast or instead of our breakfast. We have that as we go towards the midday, and then towards the evening is also when we typically have a peak there as well. Now, our needs shift throughout the day. That's also a shifting gear. That also impacts what we're typically going to snack on as the day progresses as well. So let's take a look at this. Let's dive into this a little bit deeper and see how the needs shift as the day progresses. So what we plotted out here, and this is just looking across the day, not just snacking, but we're looking at indulgent needs versus health needs and when they're popping up most heavily. So at that beginning of the day, so starting around 7 or 8 o'clock, you see those pink lines are a bit higher compared to the purple ones. And that means the needs for health are higher compared to indulgence. Indulgence is still there. We want foods to taste good, but health really is reigning in the beginning of the day. As we get towards the midday, you start to see them converge a bit more. So that's when we're starting to mix and match things a little bit more. Things that have a health halo, but you know what? I need things like speed and convenience, and I also want it to taste good. Those all start to come in during the midday. And then when we get to the end of the day, we can see that health becomes more of a tertiary concern, and things like indulgence and even functionality are part of what reigns that day. And so that's why we see ice cream at the end of the day really is what's the key thing. And that's when most consumers have ice cream compared to other day parts. So how have we been shifting the occasions as the years have gone by? So we looked at well past the pre-pandemic period. We're looking compared to 2018 here in packaged snacks. We've seen a little bit of a shift towards that morning day part, right? Since the pandemic, as Sally alluded to, it's kind of been a tale of two different time periods. More recent times we've seen different shifts, but overall, the main shift that we've seen since the pre-pandemic period is that there's been a little bit of a shift in terms of packaged snacks in the morning, but look what's going on in food service. At least since that time, we have seen a lot of snacking happen later on in the day, when, as we just saw, that's when more indulgent needs start to come up. And so again, this is pointing to how maybe we're using in-home snacking versus away-from-home snacking a bit more differently. Maybe in-home snacking, there might be, like I said, next year, more opportunity for some well-being, but certainly when we're away from home, we're looking for more indulgence as that day goes on. And that's typical when we're going away from home. We are typically more often looking for indulgent items, having someone else do the work for us. And so that's why we see more indulgence happening on that time of day. Briefly, I want to talk with you about what's going on in terms of GLP-1 drugs. We're, like Sally said, we're still developing this. We are still trying to peel away the layers of the onion. Just some interesting facts to share with you, just to watch out for. People who are on these weight loss drugs, they actually tend to consume more calories. That could be a reason for why they're getting on these drugs in the first place, to help get that under control. But that is one thing that they're doing. And as far as some of the foods and beverages that the people on these weight loss drugs use more often, things like carbonated soft drinks did come up to the very top. So things that are a bit more sugary, and especially if these consumers are using this for the purpose of to treat their diabetes, those are going to be some of the things that they're going to watch out, that they're not going to have as often. So that's a little bit of a watch out if more and more consumers are typically using these drugs. And just a couple of snack foods that we see here that they might be consuming more often. So things like salted snacks, cookies is a little bit above average as well. So if we see more and more people on these drugs, it could lead to perhaps more people pulling back on some of these snack foods. But like we said, we're still evaluating this. There's only about 4% of people right now that we estimate who are on these drugs. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Sally, and she's going to discuss the different fares and how to compete on more than just price.
Thanks, Darren. And indeed, it's just growth is going to come from different fares. Price definitely plays a role in snacking decision. We see it with what consumers tell us in our survey, from 81% saying that they're looking for the best value. But again, value means different things to different people. But that's why 74% actually say they look at price before choosing a snack. That's up 3.7 points since 19. But there's other things outside of price that really have driven consumers on what they're looking for. We've had a slowdown in the innovation. I do think 24 could be the comeback year, right? I'm really optimistic. We've got some examples in here of just recent introductions. So I am bullishly optimistic. There's been distribution loss, though, because there's been some shifting on the shelf with assortments, sizes, private brands, national versus national brands, so all of that. You've already seen that the role of snack really does play a different role in each of us and how we live our lives and the lifestyles that we have. Private label has gained penetration in snacking. We're going to touch on that in a second. Retailers changing priorities, again, based on what their needs are for their particular outlets. We've seen a little bit of drop in trade efficiency. And as I told you at the beginning, we're really crossing our fingers that we will see a better impact on the promotion dollars that we're investing in 24. And then the changing needs and occasions. So let's dive on into here. The snacks not only offer variety, but those roles across the journey that they have. So these need states, if you will, better for you, wellness. You've got a lot of consumers saying that that's what they're looking for. In fact, some of the biggest upticks were around vitamins, nutrition. You've got 52% of consumers saying they look for help with digestion, and that's up 12 points since 19. So there is that need there, but yet at the same time, consumers want to indulge, but sometimes a little bit more permissible. What does that mean? Well, you could take a fried snack, make it baked, that's permissible. You could take a snack and add some protein, makes it a little more permissible. So you have that. Indulgence is fully loaded, and consumers are looking for that. You've got over 57% of consumers saying that they like to eat snacks that add excitement to their daily diet. That's up 7.2 points. Let's face it, guys, it's tough out there. And so we're all looking for help. And then treating, which is in this definition is the NCA, National Confectionery Association definition of chocolate, non-chocolate gum and mints. Consumers want fun. When we look at the numbers that back those four segments, a couple of things stand out. First, when I said, Darren talked about from a consumption standpoint, this is from a purchase standpoint. So the better for you wellness purchasing, it's still got a negative unit change, but it's holding on to share. So it's just holding on to unit share. So I think that's positive. It eked out a 0.1, but the winner continues to be True Indulgence. So even though it didn't grow units, it saw an 8% increase in dollars, but it didn't decline in units. And in this picture, that's a positive, as well as, again, gaining a little bit more share from a unit perspective. Labels on products actually are indeed aligning to some of the stated goals. For instance, all natural ingredients, 53% of consumers are looking for that, and that was up 9 points since 19. Vitamin fortified, back to my point a little while ago, consumers are looking for those additional benefits from their snacking. 63% of consumers want snacks that contain vitamins and minerals, and that is up 5.4 points. So you can see how the claims, and the ones that we're showing you here are the ones that indeed gained in label and in the share of eatings. Flipping and now taking a look at just claims on the packaging and lining that up to unit change. And let me just say this, when you look at this, it isn't that the claim drove it. It is saying that products that have a no, low, or less sugar claim, they grew units 1.8%. Products that had oil claims grew units 5.6%. And it aligns a little bit. I can see that the vegetarian and vegan need to be over, but vegetarian and vegan also grew 1%, and you've got 26% of consumers saying they're looking for vegetarian snacks. That's up 7 points, and 23% looking for vegan. That's up 6.5 points. Sorry, we'll get that moved over before the final report. Now, this one is a tricky one to show on a webinar, but I really am going to try and simplify. What we looked at is really volume growth for the latest 26 weeks versus, and that's on your kind of your vertical axes, and then the horizontal axes is kind of that premium volume share. And the idea is to see, hey, are premium snacks growing? And there's certain categories that really have fueled premium snacks. And you can see them here, whether it's around ready to drink coffee, chocolate candy is on the cusp, frozen novelties, muffins. So you can kind of see where some of those are pointing towards. And then private brands. So value does indeed play a role. And this is, again, another scatter plot, but it just shows you that as you look at private labels share change, there's a lot of growth in those up in the upper green, whether that's around nutritional snacks and trail mixes, whether it's around donuts, whether it's around aerosol spread, cheese spreads, could be any of those. And then you see some that are not doing so well, meaning that national brands are probably really taking hold and being what consumers are looking for in sherbet and sorbet, in ice milks, as an example. I did want to go back and I want to note one thing. Even though 67% of consumers state that when their budget is tight, they often switch to private brands, and that's up 6 points. So it is a real deal. Consumers are doing it. On the flip, they also state that they want their brand of choice. I think what that is really pointing towards is having stores maintaining both national brand and private brands is critical for snacking. I've shared these type of points with you in the past, probably 6-7 years. And it's looking at each of the different categories and then breaking it down by small size and large size. I've got 2 pages of this. My biggest message to you is really continue to monitor your price size architecture by channel. It is so important. What the winners were non-chocolate, smaller size, the smaller size for potato chips, but the continuous winner is tortilla chips, winning with both small and large. And then you can also see all other snacks, salted snacks won with small. You may be saying, what do I do with this and how do I use it? Again, I cannot emphasize the need to do price size architecture, because as we talk to consumers, some are looking for these large sizes, and it could be multi-packs. In fact, multi-packs grew in dollars. We were relatively slightly a little lower on units, but 61% of consumers say that multi-packs really appeal to multiple people in the household. That's up 3.8 points. And you can see some of the other reasons, but it's all about pleasing the family. That's what they're looking for. And as you then figure out, well, where are they shopping? Well, I showed you the shifts, that share shift. Now we're looking at growth and what channels are contributing to growth. It's a similar story. It's dollar, it's club, it's also online, and C-store. So it's a similar story where the shifts are and the ones that are driving growth. But I don't want to minimize. Mass is still driving growth. In fact, they're getting more than their fair share, but they did definitely have a decline versus the prior period. Grocery is also driving growth, but not its fair share. And back to sizes matter, and some of these channel shifts that we see, I think it's very linked to the sizes that are kind of favored, if you will, in these channels. So grocery, it favors larger, where mass also favor larger, but C-store and dollar and drug favor smaller, and club is obviously larger. So that's why this price size architecture and really getting your channel strategy right is so, so important. And part of the other piece is affordability, because low and middle incomes are really the ones driving the charge, if you will, to the dollar store. And you can see that it's low income is at a 132 index, really driving more of that unit share shift. And we also measure on-shelf availability, and you want to have on-shelf availability. We don't necessarily have a benchmark, but we always say 90s or better. Then, that means you're probably on the shelf, available to your consumers more often than not. And you can see here that we've definitely seen an uptick. So 84% of snack categories improved their on-shelf availability rates, but it's varied across categories, as you can see here. Some positive, like corn snacks and frozen novelties and cookies from a frozen cookie perspective. But on the flip side, we saw some losses like gum, and more than likely that's some of the changes that are happening at checkout, right? So there's implications of that, and just continue to monitor. And as we then look at just top ranked categories and where they are, I would say use that, like refrigerated yogurt. It's just at that 94.55. So I'm like, that ekes out. It's actually at a good place, but I use that as a little bit of an indicator to show you there's some other categories that if you look and you see, maybe even it's the snack cupcakes, snack size cupcakes and brownies, they have some room to continue to grow and being available to the consumer. All right, those joy rides that I talked about. This is really innovating and connecting a joy and excitement to snacking. And as you think about that, we always have asked this question, and it always was either the same or on an uptick. But the last 2 years, we have seen a decline in flavor and taste, but it's still a majority. So 83% of consumers choose a snack that has a flavor they prefer, and 85% choose a snack that has the taste they really are going to enjoy. So taste and flavor still matter. And when you think about that wellness journey that consumers are on, they are not only kind of seeking that well-being, but they're looking for experiences. They want that joyride. They want to be able to have something unique and fun. And that is why we think innovation is going to be key, but it isn't going to be easy. It isn't going to be like in years past where you put innovation on the shelf. You're going to have to work harder. 49% of consumers say that when their budget is tight, they're going to stick to the same products that they've normally bought. So it means you're going to have to work harder, incentivize them, use social digital, use influencers, use the checkout people in the stores. And in fact, when we ask consumers, where did they find out about new products? Many of them talked about social media. 34% of them did, up 1.7 points. Family and friends is the largest, but it's also declining because of how you see that picture. that's basically my children. They just look at their phones. That's what's influencing them. So when you think about what Darren showed you on the life cycle, and you think about Gen Alpha, and you think about the influence, it isn't going to necessarily always be family and friends. You got to make sure you've got the right connection points, all that integrated engagement that's key. And the part that's on that snacking highway and all the parts, whether it's the billboards or the TV or the smart app, at the very end, the percent of consumers that are influenced by checkout was 42%. It was the largest one. And it had a 4-point change of 4.9. It wasn't the largest point change. The largest point change was actually in-store, but it still shows that in-store matters. I got excited about this research because I think it points towards so many different pit stops along the way that you can influence the consumer on that journey. So now, where are they? Well, screen time is one of those areas where we found a big uptick, especially for that motivation of that routine, yummy and reward me that we talked about earlier. And we saw a big uptick in when you look at the percent of eatings within that need state, it was watching a movie or on the internet. But 20% was also watching a TV program. And so as you think through that and you think about the ways in which you want to engage, think about the screen time and make sure you have something available to talk to them. But also, look, we do a great job as this industry of capitalizing on big holidays and big moments like the Super Bowl. We do a phenomenal job. But there's micro holidays throughout the year that you can celebrate and really influence consumers on. Again, if we can uptick our buy rate and or units in the basket, we're gonna fix our unit problem. We will. And it's going to take this integrated engagement approach to be able to do so. Now, I talked about how flavors are maybe not the number one answer, but yet at the same time, one of the top answers of what consumers are looking for. We took a look at two different ways of looking at it from top sales. And one was salty and crackers. So again, more savory. And you can see that the big flavors that pop for savory is heat, any kind of heat, cheese, barbecue, but then there were others that kept popping like salt and vinegar and hint of salt, honey. Those really did pop with that, wanting that little bit of savory and sweet together. When we looked at cookies and bars and you saw some of the sweeter flavors coming through like chocolate, peanut butter, honey, cinnamon, you can kind of see, and I'll tell you what, marshmallows had a big year. So whether it was a marshmallow itself or marshmallows included, it had a big year. It's affordable. It's got this texture. It's fun. You can dress it up. You can dress it down. So this one's more about marshmallows being included in a favor as opposed to a marshmallow standalone. But I wanted to highlight that as well. If you've ever listened to any of mine, you know that I love to look at the same data, but in different ways. So that was kind of top sales. Now I'm going to show you unit growth. So this is raw unit growth and the flavors that pop there, like flaming hot, honey barbecue, chocolate caramel, peanut butter and grape jelly, right? So some ways of taking that favorite flavor combinations and bringing them into snacking. Flipping that and looking at largest percent change, then you start to see some very unique combinations like chamoy sour, trail mix crumble, back to the dulce enchiladas, right? So you've got a little bit of like that sweet and savory. You've got some really fun combinations of sweet and fun combinations of savory. And if anybody is like, why does she have salmon and tuna nigiri? It is because part of the snacking universe is indeed sushi. Now, I also want to footnote, when Darren was showing you the specialty coffees, that is not something we have in the core like point of sale definition, but it is something that you need to think about in the consideration set of the consumer. I kind of talked about the fact that I was cautious and kind of bullish on the fact that we were going to have more innovation this year. These are just some innovations that occurred in 2023 and starting of 24. And it's showing across all the flavors that I pointed towards, or at least some of them. And then also limited editions that consumers love. And I did a retailer panel at a conference and they love limited editions because it really does bring that like need to get in there and get it before it's gone, and it adds excitement. So keep those coming. But be bold, especially with fan favorite flavors like peanut butter whiskey, or brand extensions that are going to get you into some of these catchy cocktails, because it just keeps the brand essence in front of them, uniquely categorized, if you will, and it's just plain fun. We also had some folks at Expo West, and some of the different recent innovations are aligning with everything that we've talked to you about, whether it's more that health and well-being with a new take on nut spreads, edamame varieties, mushrooms blossoming, if you will, but also protein, back to that permissibility, just adding in protein, having some products that are going to deliver against the need, and the needs are different for different people. I was interrupted on my trip in a Kroger store just during Easter, where they didn't have just bouquets of flowers, but in the floral department, they had bouquets of snacks. Keep doing that. Keep coming up with ways to embrace occasions and speed up sales, especially units and the trips. And I don't know if anybody saw it. I'm not able to play the video because of time, but there's been a lot around even the Stanley Cup craze this past year, where you could put the ice cream in the Stanley Cup and eat it, keep it cold, or even a little tray that goes around it. Grab on and latch on to any of the viral moments that are out there that you feel are relevant for your snacks. Now, finally, just getting down to the fuel. Moving forward, the snack journey will continue to be fun, but especially if we increase trips and buy rate. And we think that there's at least 2 to 3% dollar growth if we just stayed status quo. But if we can do these things as well, we think there's more could be realized. You want to ensure the portfolio has representation of key cohorts of snacks aligned to indulgence and well-being, inclusive of functional benefits. You want to start and enhance. So you probably maybe already are doing price pack architecture, but keep it going expressly across price tiers. Identify and embrace relevance with your target consumers in and out of home, as well as reach your loyal buyers and incent them to buy yet one more. Don't forget commercial and non-commercial operators when you're doing this. It all helps. Ensured channel strategy is linked to the price pack insights. So once you do that, make sure that your sales team is aligned and you have this integrated approach all the way to the in-store. You want to focus on differentiated experiences. Look, it's especially when we're on the go and we were looking for something. If you want to keep sales coming, you have to be differentiated and or unique. Innovate to capture consumer needs, the interactions, segments, align and price. You can innovate with messaging. You don't always have to have a new product. You can make a product seem new through your messaging. Optimize your supply chain for efficiency and on-shelf availability. Use loyalty apps and reward programs to drive engagement, as well as buy rate for retail and food service. And lastly, be smart about your integrated marketing activation and personalization that you use, especially social and digital. This is a way that you can embrace and create your own viral moments that are positive. And remember that purchase-based audiences in general deliver 6 times the return on investment versus not. So with that, Darren and I want to say thank you. You can subscribe to all of our different thought leadership. And then the questions that you have provided us in the chat, we will be answering post this show. So with that, I want to thank you on behalf of Darren and myself for joining us today on the snack journey. We hope it was beneficial. Have a great rest of the day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.